it's a shutout by the Devils, and there's one moment in the game that that the conversation has now bled into today, and that is the Jacob Trouba hit on Timo Meier. Now, we used to see this regularly. You know, a player under the blue line cutting across gets met by, I don't know, insert your defenseman, Scott Stevens, Darius Kasparaitis, like whomever. Like this used to be a common occurrence, and it used to be one of those things where coaches remind you, don't do that underneath the blue line, and don't do that when that player is on the ice. Now, the league is in a much different place now. It's in a much different place by personnel and by vibe, and everything about the game is different when it comes to collisions. But this one's really kind of opened up a discussion point about, you know, what should we do about these types of hits? What should we do about these types of players? What should we do about players putting themselves in vulnerable positions? Like there's no call, there's no supplemental. I think everyone looked at that and said, well, when you look at the hitting rules, a lot of them. Oh, by the way, I got a note from a manager yesterday after the hit, and Meier went off and then came right back, and this one note just said, "Wow, he got protocoled pretty fast, hey?" And I'm like, yeah, that was a pretty quick, considering the nature of the violence of the hits. Timo Meier came back pretty quickly, but nonetheless, park that conversation for a second. How did you see that hit, DA? And where are you at in the conversation about hits like that?
Well, and I was wondering, what is the protocol? Is it 10 minutes? I actually don't know what the protocol timing is supposed to be.
I'm not exactly sure. And again, I'm just going by feel, and I'm just grabbing the note here.
It felt quick to me too.
Yeah, so I sent a note about it, and this manager sent back, I wondered the same. They protocoled him up real quick. So it wasn't.
Maybe it's not time. Maybe it's baseline questions, but I'm not sure.
I would imagine, but given the nature of the score at that point too, don't you sort of err on the side of caution and say, you know what, you're good to sit this one. I don't know, but
this is again an ongoing conversation. Well, I mean, I think the PA needs to take a leading charge in this when it comes to any of the player safety issues. The league, I don't think, is necessarily going to mandate things without the PA sort of jumping on board. I've made the guys all laugh at me because I make this whole thing about ear flaps, and I don't know, like Malkin and Crosby wear ear flaps, and it doesn't provide 100% protection. But you look at some of the injuries that we've had in the last few years. Brian Little's career was effectively ended by a slap shot to the side of his helmet, where maybe an ear flap would have mitigated some of the damage. So I look at some of those things and say, I wonder why the PA hasn't instituted, some other things, or at least, and I know a lot of the players kind of roll their eyes, let us take the risk. We want to take the risk. When it came to last night's hit, though, I'm not sure what you do as far as from a league standpoint. I didn't look at that, and I know Trouba is excellent at walking the line and sometimes tiptoeing or stepping over that line. I didn't think last night was one of those moments. I think that was just an absolutely bone-crushing, devastating hit with a player in a vulnerable position, but who, again, as you sort of said right off the hop, like players aren't maybe taught to have their head up as they would have been, in the last generation of players. The Nick Ronwalls and the Darian Hatchers aren't necessarily waiting. Jacob Trouba is one of the exceptions in the league now. I don't know how you keep physicality and how you keep, serious contact in the game and police that specific hit from last night. I really just don't have the answer. I definitely think trying to protect these guys as best possible has to be paramount, but you have to keep the essence of the game as it is.